Let's go. Ever be that bitch you think I'm whack? Shut up. You know I'm in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Ooh, pressure. I got many hits that'll take you 10 years to catch up. Hit the box, still rock on any block. When you see my car park, all eyes on me like Tupac. On the chart, I just hopscotch. I got many box. Who wanna do verses with me? Thought not.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. Thank you for joining me here for Think About It Thursdays on Conversations with Taz. If you can't tell, I'm extremely, extremely congested, but we're still going to get through this. Where to start? Let's start. With the UN Security Council, Zelensky's primal argument is that Russia should not have a seat because it actually belongs to the Soviet Union, which no longer exists. Zelensky also told Congress today that without the U.S. assistance, and he's requesting $24 billion, the Ukraine will lose the war, which will not look good for the rest of us either. Oh. Alrighty. Now, last night, McCarthy came up with a new plan regarding government funding. He said this would fund the government through October 31st. It would cut discretionary spending to a top level of $1.7 trillion. It would include most of the House GOP's immigration crackdown bill, the border bill, and would create a commission on national debt to examine spending. That was knocked down by the same old 5 Magadonians, ultra MAGAs in the House. Now, one thing that I don't think a lot of people realize is that during the height of the pandemic, Congress allocated funds for childcare. It was called the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA. Ooh. Oh my goodness, I'm so stuffy. Sorry. And these were stabilization funds. $40 billion to the states for child care relief, $24 billion to providers and centers. Businesses are now urged to advocate for the funding to be restored. Oh my goodness. Now, if this funding runs out, as it is predicted to do on September 30th, this will result in 70,000 child care programs more than likely closing. If they do not close, parents will just have to either reduce their hours or pull their children out because these prices of child care will increase. 3.2 million children may lose their spots in these facilities. 232,000 jobs could be lost. And the states are looking at a potential of losing $10.6 billion in revenue, and parents could end up losing $9 billion in lost annual earnings. Now, for those that go, oh, it's just childcare, it's not that big of a deal. Here's the numbers behind that. Women in the workforce gains since the pandemic. For the ages 25 to 54, 77.8% are working or looking for work, which is the highest amount for women in United States history. In August, the workplace gender gap decreased to 10.5%, which is the lowest it's ever been. In June, 70.4% of mothers with children under 5 were able to enter or re-enter the workplace. This is huge. We want to talk about unemployment decreasing and the economy getting back to where it's supposed to go. Part of why we're having economic issues in the United States is because people can't afford childcare. And if you can't afford proper childcare, because you can't just leave your kids anywhere, what's the likelihood of you going to find sustainable employment? Now, there's a full recap of Rupert Murdoch's history linked in the description of this video. But the 92-year-old Rupert Murdoch will be stepping down from heading Fox Corp in November and will be replaced by his son Lockhart. Now, before we start celebrating, keep in mind that Lockhart is far more to the right than his father. He's more along the lines of Tucker Carlson, well, what Tucker Carlson portrays when a camera is on, and Trump. So Fox may be leaning far more towards the right. But this changing of the guard, keep in mind, Fox News debuted in 1996. And don't forget, Ailes and Rupert got the idea from Ronald Reagan himself. Ronald Reagan basically wanted what other countries had. He wanted state-run television for conservatives, Republican conservatives, but they're like, we could do that though. And over the years, they have just decreased and exponentially decreased in their journalistic integrity where there is none. As we've seen from all of these lawsuits just from this year alone, they don't care about facts. They care about ratings. And they don't even care about sponsorship dollars as much as they do rating. But one thing that I think a lot of people have forgotten about what I call the Murdoch model to television and to media, Rupert Murdoch owns the stations that in the mid to late 90s, early 2000s, that were giving you super diverse shows, your New York Undercover, stuff like that. And he was kind of using that as capital to get credibility with society, and then denigrating every non-white person, every non-straight, non-Christian person through Fox News. And you know how everybody makes fun of, especially on TikTok, the Tubi movies and Tubi streaming? Give you two guesses as to who owns that streaming company. Yeah, you guessed it. The whole Fox conglomerate. Now, today there was some additional news that came out regarding the DOJ when it was under the control of Bill Barr. And this came out because a former prosecutor for the Department of Justice did have a confirmation hearing for the Connecticut Supreme Court yesterday. And she did release some information that we kind of knew, but we didn't have confirmation on. So we're going to break it down now. Now, if you remember, in April of 2020, Barr went on to Fox News and firmly alleged that the left was trying to sabotage Trump's campaign, the 2016 campaign. You know, when Trump was like, Russia, Russia, Russia. Keep that firmly in mind as we move forward. Then you remember the Durham report that actually found that Trump had financial crimes in Italy, but never went forward with it. Well, one of the people working on the Durham investigation that led to the Durham report and then the Durham case that went to trial twice was Nora Dennehy, former prosecutor. She quit working for the Department of Justice because she was asked to write a report on an ongoing investigation, which is not protocol for the Department of Justice, and on a draft, the original draft, it appears to be, of the Durham report, the conclusions of the draft that she saw, she did not agree with. Now, before you tout her as a hero and go, well, at least she quit, keep in mind, she stayed through all of the lies and all of the other shenanigans that were going on under the direction of John Durham and Bill Barr. So it's like, oh, you found the line that was too far for you. Whoop-de-doo. One cookie? Now, Dennehy had worked at the Department of Justice through quite a few different administrations. And like I said, yesterday was her confirmation hearing for the Connecticut Supreme Court. And there were a total of 6 prosecutors that quit when Bill Barr was the head of the Department of Justice before he inevitably quit before January 6th. Remember, he quit a day before Christmas Eve, right before January 6th occurred. Now, John Durham, the case/report. 24 jurors over the course of 2 trials found unanimously that the case was not proven. It resulted in nothing but acquittals. And this showed that the report was nothing more than a political stunt. It was nothing more than Trump utilizing Bill Barr to weaponize the Department of Justice. Hence, all of the projection currently. And do not forget that June of this year, John Durham went in front of Congress and admitted that he did not investigate thoroughly the Russian interference or Trump's connections to Russia. Remember that testimony where he was like, I don't recall. I don't know. We didn't look into that. Why would we look into that? He did admit there was proof of Russian interference, but he didn't take it any further. And that Russian interference was into the 2016 election. He feigned ignorance regarding the Mueller report when it came out, and he was asked about that in June of this year as well. But here's the thing. He is described by everyone who knows him as a man of devout faith, and that he believed he was serving a greater good. He did give a speech quite a few years ago where he said that his faith is his greatest mission in life. Now, prior to the Trump administration, John Durham had an impeccable reputation and an impeccable career. He decided to throw it all away for Trump. But when you're a tyrannical Christian and you believe that a womanizing, grifting idiot is your second coming, I guess you'll do anything. Now, before we move on to a few more updates, let's get to Mike Pence, paddles, and kids. Because we need to,
asked Pence what he would do if he was president to help school districts and their teachers deal with extreme behavior problems in their classrooms. Here's what Pence had to say.
I went to Catholic school for 8 years. The Board of Education was applied to my seat of knowledge more than once in those 8 years. And the nuns knew how to get the paddle out when you deserved it. I guarantee you I deserved it more times than I got it. I think traditional discipline being returned to our schools as opposed to flooding our kids with Ritalin and other behavior modification chemicals makes more sense to me. The Bible says, spare the rod, spoil the child. I'm a believer in that. But I also think the American people deserve to know that many of our public schools are medicating kids instead of disciplining kids. And I think we ought to get back to more traditional discipline, allow schools, make it clear that that's acceptable, just as it was in our time.
I don't know any schools that are just passing out medication to children. Because by the time I left elementary school, you could not paddle a child anymore. And by the time I was leaving high school, and by the time my children were entering school, it was very difficult for a child to even carry around aspirin, let alone the schools handing it out. But let's also not forget, a few months ago, I brought to you all Mike Pence's cousin dropped some bombshells on Mike Pence. He's talking about he got the paddle not as much as he should have. He's always been a goody-tooty, hoity-toity. He just became radicalized into Christianity even further. and even converted from one form of Christianity to another during college. And I hate that whole spare the rod, spoil the child. Yes, give a child discipline, not beat the crap out of them. A child with ADHD, a bunch of whoopings is not going to fix them. And maybe, just maybe, stop treating schools like factory preparation. Because I was actually talking to my dad the other day. Who determined that after kindergarten, there's no more naps? Because think about it, you get these kids, you put them in daycare, you put them in preschool, you put them in kindergarten. Their whole schedule, their whole everything is based on a nap. Even in first grade, people bring their kids home and put them down for a nap, but then you expect them to just snap out of it. And then the lunch schedule makes absolutely positively no sense. You got kids eating lunch during the time of brunch. You don't want them to have snacks or water or anything in school. Okay. I'm like, all right, I don't know why y'all think it's not assault because a child is younger than you. Because you can't even say smaller than you, because depending on your size, a lot of them ain't smaller than you. Now, before we move on to Ron DeSantis, let's check in with Tim Scott and Coach D, because he's got some great commentary on this. See you in 2 and 2.
I think Ronald Reagan gave us a great example when federal employees decided they were going to strike. He said, "You strike, you're fired." Simple concept to me. To the extent that we could use that once again, absolutely.
First of all, pardon my French, but Ronald Reagan hasn't given us shit but trickle-down economics, which y'all keep trying to feed us, even though you know it has never worked. If you strike, you should be fired. Wow. First of all, no one clapped because everyone sitting in there was like, what? Not to mention, UAW members are not federal employees. He has his history all messed up. But the real issue is that he doesn't understand basic civics in America. The right to strike is a protected right. This collective bargaining that they're engaging in is 100% legal, and it should be. Why in the hell would anyone want to give billion-dollar corporations so much power? These people work their asses off, and they haven't even gotten a cost of living increase in years. The CEOs have given themselves a 40% pay raise, but have only given their employees 6%. Listen to this again. They've given themselves a 40% pay raise in the last 4 years, but have only given their employees 6%. What the hell, Tim Scott? You're siding with the 0.01% over the 99.9%. No wonder you're polling so low. You're arguing for the guys who are going to buy extra yachts with their pay raises over the people who are going to buy their kid a pair of shoes or their family dinner with their pay raise. But you know what else is sad? Is that Republicans, some who work public sector jobs and union jobs, agree with this. Like I know police officers, firefighters, and teachers who vote against their best interests every election cycle. Listen, people, you will never be amongst the 0.01%. It's mathematically impossible. So why in the hell do you keep giving them power? It's crazy. Period.
Now, let's also not forget that when Tim Scott held that rally to announce his presidency, he admitted with his whole chest, amongst other things, that he failed civics. But Coach D is absolutely right. We know. And here's the thing. There's so many conservatives right now rallying against the United Auto Workers Union, UAW, but they have no problem with the police union. They will defend the police union till their dying breath and not even be a police officer, not even have a friend, let alone a family member that is a police officer. And there are police officers who will vote conservative and who will join into this conversation as if they don't pay union dues every paycheck, as if their union is not fighting tooth and nail to keep all of them out of jail and to hold on to qualified immunity so that they don't have to do as doctors do and carry liability insurance. And what blows my mind are when I come across firemen who do the same. There's a whole firemen's union. And my thing is, to the children and spouses of fallen firemen and fallen cops, any of you that are out here talking shit about the UAW and choosing to continue to vote conservative, realize every time you do that, you're spitting on the graves of your loved ones, because your lifestyle is being sustained by those pension plans. If you or your children or your siblings went to college, those unions helped you. I know this for a fact. I know the children of a fallen fireman. And I know how the union has checked up on them all through these years and made sure they're straight. I mean, their mother's keeping them straight, but y'all get what I'm saying. And what really boggles my mind, as SAG-AFTRA and WGA, UPS avoided a strike, and now UAW are striking. It's really mind-boggling how many people are like, oh, they're already getting into blah, 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 are the same ones fighting to get paid properly at work, are the same ones that were dancing in the streets when that young man in New York got a union started at an Amazon location. And just a little bit, a caveat before we move forward. In all these runoff and special elections that are happening, the candidates that are winning are either never Trump Republicans or Democrats. So there's still hope. Keep in mind, I know it can feel like the Magadonians are a majority because, one, they keep saying we're the silent majority. Y'all are not the majority, and y'all motherfuckers ain't never silent. Because they're so boisterous, pay attention. Haven't you heard the saying, the squeakiest wheel gets the oil? They keep making the most noise. They keep antagonizing everybody. They keep trying to pick a fight. They keep making the news. They're the ones out here with 50 million flags, spending all of their money while they're complaining about gas prices. They're the ones having truck rallies and driving all across the country to get a glimpse of Trump. All of them seem to have diesel trucks. And they're constantly sending off money. But they are the minority. Trump has never had the popular vote. Ever. That's why in his OG campaign, he was already screaming election fraud. He already knows he doesn't have the populace. He's banking on new pools of voters moving in. That's why his rhetoric has changed to, I'm going for you. Because he's hoping that the children and grandchildren of the dumb fucks that are already supporting him have indoctrinated them enough that he can weasel them into the office. Will weasel them into voting him into office. Now, let me update you on the DeSantis campaign. It's going about as well as we all predicted. In New Hampshire, DeSantis is now polling 5th after being 1st in January. We already know he's not a likable candidate. He has no plan for his campaign beyond his war on woke. And if you've noticed lately, he's kind of let go of that whole war on woke thing because it never caught on, and he could never explain what woke was, so nobody really knew what this war was about. And he really tanked when he mocked a child. Let me repeat this. When he mocked a child for having an icy because he felt like a child shouldn't have a sugary treat. Must be fun in that household. And all of his campaign language is centered around himself. Not the country, not what he's got. It's about himself. And because he's focused on himself, like I always tell y'all when it comes to sales, and politics is nothing but selling yourself into a popularity contest. Whatever you talk about is what people are going to focus on. If you're trying to sell a product and you're constantly talking about your competition, people's focus are going to be on the competition. If you're saying you're best for the nation, but you're only talking about yourself, and then most notably, his fight with Disney turned off a lot of people, a lot of the GOP voter base, especially in Florida, but the GOP voter base, period. Because the GOP is very business centered, very business focused. And it was stupid because, let me remind you, he is twice Ivy League educated. Twice. In law and history. He's a former history teacher. So he understands all of the BS and the shenanigans that he did. And his attempt to be Trump 2.0, he's learning nothing from history. He learned nothing from the frivolous lawsuits that Trump went through. And you really don't want legal troubles while you're supposed to be campaigning. And then his 6-week abortion ban, remember, he swooped into Florida, signed that in the wee hours of the morning, and then swooped back out on a private jet that belongs to somebody else that's been sponsoring him. See, while all of them, and if you've been here for a while, we've broken down all of the candidates. While all of them are pretending to be, we got it out of the mud, they're all elite. They're all elites. They're playing the good old boy country music singer game. And I'm not talking about like the country music singers of old. I'm not talking about Loretta Lynn. I'm not talking about Crystal. I know. We're talking about the Jason Aldeans, the Luke Bryans, that, yeah, I grew up poor. Then you go to private school. No. That was on a scholarship from your grandpapa's bank account. Where they pretend, just like Kid Rock and Ariana Grande and Taylor Swift pretended to have a struggle getting into the music industry, where they had the money, they had studios in their houses, and those with the closest connection to more recently immigrated into the country relatives are the ones that are so fervently anti-immigration. I cannot fathom how their children and the younger generations within their families feel. And this is why I say I really wish people would pay attention to history. And I'm not even saying go back through all the rabbit holes like I do. even recent history. Please try not to have such a short memory. Because y'all remember when Rafael, aka Ted Cruz, stopped going so hard on the LGBTQIA plus community? When he eased up on his immigration and border talk so much? When his daughter tried to take her life? And before anybody says, but Taz, you said children are off limits. I am not denigrating this child whatsoever. I'm bringing to your attention that these people have forgotten that they have children and how their rhetoric is affecting their children. Just like the video I put out directly at Vivek Ramaswamy, and I asked him, what are your words? What are your stances doing to affect your children? How is this impacting your children as well as your parents, who made great strides to make sure you didn't have to struggle as a child, and you're out here giving people the impression that they were dumb, stereotypical immigrants, just brown faces dancing around for the man, barely making ends meet. And then Ted Cruz has a bisexual daughter who's listening to her father, who's listening to his friends that visit the house. And, you know, politicians love to take the kids out with them. And people, especially the elites, they treat their children as accessories that they bring out when they need to dress something up. And as we're deciding who to vote for, who's going to be in our best interest, we have to remind these politicians, like they had to do in the 90s and in the 80s, with commercials reminding parents not to beat their kids, putting billboards up for daddies and stepdaddies not to fuck their daughters, and asking them where their kids are. We have to remind these politicians, like, you have whole ass families at home that hear you and see you. And it's a lot different than when we were in school. Because a lot of people in my generation didn't really watch the news until they got older. Didn't really read the news until they got older. So without the internet, a lot of these kids may not know what their friends' parents are saying on Capitol Hill. But right now, news is immediate. And these kids will scour the internet to get dirt on one another. You think they don't? They watch adults do it. They watch adults do it over simple little disagreements on the internet. Go and find where somebody works, what they like to do, who they follow on the internet, who they're dating, who they dated back in 6th grade. You think these kids ain't up the ante? But moving on to Trump. Trump, it is reported, is skipping the second and third GOP debates. There's a second debate next week. And some people are saying this is a sign that he's listening to his attorneys. It might be because his last couple of interviews, even though, yes, he went off the rails and he's not really on his A game, which is hard to tell what Trump's A game is. He is starting to use certain verbiage that I call the mafia verbiage. Anytime, you had a John Gotti or whatever on trial, they would start telling the media certain things over and over and over again and not quite answering questions. But my assessment, my hypothesis regarding this, Trump cannot and does not want to face off with Chris Christie. Not only is Chris Christie the only one out of this clown car of POTUS candidates coming out of the GOP that's going to give him any pushback, Christie used to be on the inside with Trump. Christie knows where all the bodies are buried. Christie knows the exact same amount of information as Michael Flynn. That would be like you and your friend completely falling out and y'all work at the same company, and you're both up for a promotion. And you got to debate, and your best friend got to debate, like, do I run a square off with this bitch? And also, bare bargain basement, Trump doesn't need to go to any debate. He's already leaps and bounds above all the competition. At this point, the rest of them, it's basically who's going to be his VP. Also, Trump has no platform. He's not going to put together a platform, just like when he ran previously. He's not putting together a platform because he's not for anybody but himself. And this time around, it's not so much monetarily driven that he is. He truly believes that once he gets into office with a pen and a piece of paper, he can just pardon himself. So does what matter at this point? There are people who have been supporting Trump since he lost, so it wouldn't be suddenly choosing him. No, that's what I'm saying. He has no need for it. That's what I just broke down. He has no need for it. Not to mention his whole intent behind this is just to be able to pardon himself. He really believes that with an executive order, he's going to pardon himself. Let's not forget that while he was president, he was selling pardons to people. That's why I have to remind people to stop aligning certain Black artists with Trump as if they support one another. When no, these people happen to get into federal legal issues while Trump was selling pardons. And hell, if I was a career criminal and I didn't want to rot in jail and I was coming up on my 3rd or 5th strike and I had $1 million, I'd have paid it to him. I'm not a politician. I'd be like, he's the president. He told me this was the rules. And Bill Barr, his right-hand man, he's an attorney. He's the biggest attorney in the country. He's supposed to be the people's attorney. So he's supposed to be advising me, right, Bill? He told me that was cool, so I did it. Yeah. The only new fans, I think we discussed this a little bit before you joined in, he's hoping that he can draw in some of the indoctrinated new crop of voters. But those indoctrinated into conservatism, new crop of voters are very, very, very minute. And by the time the election comes around, they're going to be either out in the world working and their eyes opening up on their own, or they're going to be off to college. And what did they say? It's a different world than where you're coming from. So yeah. But yeah, because like people are like, oh, I'm done with Lil Wayne. He supported Trump. No, he bought a pardon from Trump. I would have too. I'm not even a huge Lil Wayne fan. I'm not. Like there's a song or two here that I can bop my head to, but not a fan. But shit, if I was facing the charges of Lil Wayne was, but shit, I slid him $1 million too. You never heard Lil Wayne like, yeah, y'all need to go out and back Trump. He wasn't on the campaign trail. The man bought a fucking pardon. Well, at this point, we're more than a year out from the election. And the rule of thumb when it comes to polling, the further you are out, the more unreliable it is, number one. Number two, the big media giants will rely on one or two polls, and that comes from whichever one of the media giants jumps out there first and polls. And depending on who's owning them at the time, like we discussed the other week regarding CNN, they're going to go after the vast majority of those on their side so that the polls look a certain way. They're not just randomly calling anybody, because raise of hands, anybody who's gotten a phone call from MSNBC, CNBC, NBC, CBS, CNN, Newsmax, Fox, anything, saying, hey, we'd like to poll you. Who would you vote for? When you've left your polling destinations after voting, even for exit polls, how many times have you run into that? It's going to be skewed. That's why I really don't bring up polling. If I do bring up polling, it's to poke fun generally at Trump, because he's obsessed with polling, because he looks at polling as if they're TV ratings, as if he ever had the greatest TV ratings ever. Because if that was the case, he would have racked up an Emmy or two. But I digress. So yeah, I've never trusted the polls. Now, there are some election analysts that I have more faith in than others. And I'm gonna be honest with you, because they're old as dirt at this point, and they've been through like 70 elections. After that much data in your back pocket, you should be pretty good at determining who's going to win an election. I'm just being honest. I'm being for real honest. If you've been around since Eisenhower, you should you've noticed some patterns. Well, not just the free press from both sides has Trump been able to spend less of campaign money, because his intention was never to spend campaign money on the campaigns. But Trump continues to stiff these locations that he has rallies at. And these places continue to let him book there. I will never understand that level of delusional business, because ain't no way. If I watch you stiff somebody else in my industry, oh, baby, I don't see you. I turn into John Cena. You can't see me. No. Now, also regarding Trump, because he's lost his mind. Before I get into this article, let me give you a little background information so you have a little better of an idea, because I told y'all I'm stuffy. I'm hopped up on Allegra and Mountain Dew. I believe it was last night. Trump declared that should he be reelected, he would immediately enact the Aliens Enemies Act. This is an act. The official name of the act is an act respecting alien enemies. It was passed to supplement the Alien Friends Act. It grants the government additional powers to regulate non-citizens, and this is meant to take effect in times of war. Trump states that he would do this in order to deport gang members that are non-citizens. Let's get into this article from NBCnews.com. Trump vows to invoke a wartime law to deport suspected foreign gang members and drug dealers. The former president also said he would expand his travel ban if elected to the White House for a second term. Remember that highly xenophobic and highly racist travel ban that, thank goodness, Joseph Robinette Biden came in and immediately put it into? Yeah, he wants to bring that back. Now, Trump made these comments while he was in Iowa. Former President Donald Trump said Wednesday that if reelected, he would immediately invoke a federal law granting himself the unilateral power to detain and deport non-citizens in the United States who are older than 14 years old. In remarks at a campaign stop, Trump pledged to use the Alien Enemies Act, part of the Alien and Sedition Acts of 1798, to target suspected gang members, drug dealers, and cartel members. You know, as much as they keep trying to tell us to forget about the antebellum period, aka the period of chattel slavery within the United States, here within the past couple years, they sure are lean back to all the legislation from that time. But I digress. Let's continue. I'll invoke immediately the Aliens Enemies Act to remove all known or suspected gang members, the drug dealers, the cartel members from the United States, ending the scourge of illegal alien gang violence once and for all. So where are you and Don Jr. and his girlfriend supposed to get your cocaine from? I guess y'all figured that out. But the Department of Justice is already working on that and has already been successful on that. And the Biden campaign has already captured far more illicit substances crossing the border on both ends than any other administration in modern history. But we're not going to talk about that. Trump said from the campaign stage here in front of more than 1,000 supporters. Trump put forward his proposal in a speech intended to outline what would amount to his second-term immigration policy, one that foreshadows a greater use of executive branch powers and law enforcement resources which the president would have greater hand in directing. He also told the crowd that he would also reinstate and expand the travel ban that he implemented during his first term in the White House. The ban, which President Joe Biden ended on his first day in office, barred most individuals from 7 countries, including 5 Muslim-majority countries, from entering the United States. The Alien Enemies Act, meant to be a wartime measure, was notably used during World War II. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt invoked it following the bombing of Pearl Harbor to order the government observation and detention of thousands of Japanese, German, and Italian nationals. I'll give you 2 guesses as to what they did with people of Asian descent on American soil, well, on United States soil during that time. Ding, ding, ding. What are internment camps? So who do you think Donald John Trump would determine to be drug dealers, to be illegal, to be undesirable? And keep in mind, by the standards of his proposed immigration policy, should we have another oopsie doodle and he make it into the White House, his father-in-law would need to be deported. Yeah, Melania's daddy got problems, got legal issues waiting for him in Slovenia. Trump himself and all of his kids will need to pack it up and go. Get no bread, get no head, just leave. Because let's not forget, the Trump family, they didn't just stay in the United States because this is just, the land of milk and honey and a place of privilege, and they can make it big here. They just want to take a bite out of the big apple. No. Ron DeSantis and his family need to go. Because his great-grandmama, slipped in on a technicality, because technically the legislation that was about to be enacted right before she slipped into the country, she did not meet the requirements to come in. She was considered an undesirable. But we already know what he considers to be shithole countries. We already know. Quick update on the Hunter Biden gun case. As I told you yesterday, Hunter Biden's attorneys requested that he appear virtually. That was denied. His first appearance must be in person. The judge says that the charges are different and information needs to be conveyed properly, and that previous virtual hearings were permitted due to the pandemic, but because these are federal charges, he has to appear for arraignment and certain court appearances. And even though this hearing will not be long and it can be a hassle for him to go from California to Delaware, especially since he is protected by the Secret Service, he still has to do it. And after the hullabaloo that Congress made yesterday, this judge is like, nah, you're not going to accuse me of giving special treatment. Also, coming out of Fulton County, Kenneth Chesborough's attorneys have entered their witness list. The witness list is approximately 50 people. I have not seen the full witness list. They've kind of hinted at some people on there. And one of the people that Chesborough is calling is commentator Van Jones. So I don't know how that's going to work. I don't know how that's going to work. But because it's a bit much, I don't want to read it here. Chesborough used to be really liberal. I'm going to post the entire article because it is a Washington Post article and there's stuff is generally behind a paywall. You know, I try to save y'all some coins where I can. So about 5 to 10 minutes after we wrap here, I will have that for you over on TikTok. And if you missed it, it was in the wee hours of the morning. There is a little expose on Rudy Giuliani over on my TikTok page. Because did y'all know his first wife, that first marriage he got annulled? Did y'all know he was married to his cousin? Like, grew up and played with cousin. Then he decided to play with cousin. I guess his baloney had a first name. It's oh Jesus. So yeah, it's if you go to my profile page on TikTok, it's marked. Oh, real quick before I forget. One, make sure you check out the links in the description of this video. The Spotify podcast, the second episode of the week, there's 2 episodes every week, Wednesday and Thursday, is available. And for some reason, my link tree, TikTok is playing with me, is no longer is clickable. You have to copy and paste it again because they keep taking down the clickable option. I don't know. I don't know why. But yeah, they're haters. Now, we know January 6th, everybody's talking about Hunter Biden is getting special permission, and they're still holding on, even though Ray Epps was indicted, pled guilty, at the same time that Merrick Garland was getting drilled for about 4.5, 5 hours. Remember Joe Biggs? Now remember, when I brought y'all a clip of Mr. Tarrio on Twitter talking to people for over an hour. Take a listen.
You remember Joe Biggs, former Proud Boy who was sentenced to 17 years in prison earlier this week. During his sentence, he said, "I know I messed up, but I'm not a terrorist." Well, he called into a certain radio show yesterday while in prison, and you may want to listen to what he had to say. And make sure you share this because it's scary.
So my heart hurts. This is ridiculous. They said that shaking offense was tantamount to terrorism. The judge told me that, and they want to send a message to Americans that if you go to these events, if you are part of political groups, they're going to throw you in prison for a long time. They want you scared. They don't want you to go out and vote. They want people scared before it's time to vote, and that's why all this heat's happening right now. This is ridiculous. We went there that day with no plan, with nothing. We were there like every other American, but it's because we're a political group. We knew that there was going to be a hit on us as soon as Joe Biden mentioned us in the first presidential debate. I knew that there was something going on with this, and sure enough, even Enrique called it. They're going to put us in chains, and sure enough, they have. But the food is horrible. Like, you can't eat the food here. It is not edible any kind of way whatsoever. To your second point, if you really want to help out, I need money to help support my daughter. They have taken away my military retirement. It's as if I never even served in the military.
Do you have hope that if Trump gets elected, despite all the challenges, he'll pardon you?
Oh, I know he'll pardon us. I believe that with all my heart. You know, the thing is hopefully getting him, for him to be able to get into the position where he can at least be, I think, on the ballot to run, right? Because once
First of all, you committed an act of treason and you were convicted of it. You're going to lose your military benefits. They're not stripping you. You were not a martyr. Second, did you catch the end of what he said? If we can get him on the ballot, it's about getting him on the ballot. They are all aware. They're all very, very, very much aware of the 14th Amendment lawsuits that are coming out to prohibit Trump from even making it onto the ballot. The people are sick of him and his antics. Allowing Trump to continue with his rhetoric and his BS is going to turn the United States into Mad Max before our eyes. But they know. And he's like, oh yeah, he's gonna, no, he's not. He's not going to pardon any of you all. He's not going to pardon any of you all. He gassed Navarro up so much that Navarro wrote out his plan, the Green Bay sweep, for election fraud for Trump, and put it into a book and made the news rounds. And Trump gave the same promise he gave to everybody. Trump only, from his super PAC, gave him $300,000 for legal fees. And now Navarro is sitting out in the wind by himself. Trump is making sure that his legal teams are showing up to all of these court dates to see who's saying what and what witnesses are coming in. Trump has no loyalty. And this is the time that Trump having loyalty actually benefits him. But he doesn't care. Trump couldn't get into the socialite crowd of New York or California, so he created his own socialite circle that he's convinced himself he is in control of. And that nobody will go against him. Surprise, surprise. So yeah, they all know that there's a great possibility that even with all this pomp and circumstance, even if at the Republican National Convention this year, they give Trump the nomination, everybody signs off and gives him the nomination, it does no good if he can't get on the ballots. It would be the equivalent of the last election when all of a sudden Kanye West came out. We knew Kanye West was coming out to split the vote. And Kanye West's name wasn't on all of the ballots. Now, let's see. We're going to run over just a little bit because I do need to bring you all the story. Real quick, I'm going to run this video and then I'm going to come back with an article with additional information regarding this Morristown family.
Have you heard about this white family from Germany who is now facing deportation and conservatives in the United States are rallying behind them? My, how the turns tables. This is the Romecki family who came here over a decade ago from Germany because they refused to send their kids to public schools in Germany. And in Germany, you're not allowed to homeschool their children. So they came to the United States to escape religious persecution because of this. Now, this all happened in 2008, and the Homeschool Legal Defense Association helped the Romeckis come to the United States to escape, persecution for sending their kids to public schools in Germany. Now, they initially came on a visa waiver program, which allows them to be in the U.S. for 90 days, but they overstayed it by 3 days and then tried to apply for asylum. But their asylum case was denied, so the right wing back then really rallied behind this family, with Glenn Beck giving $50,000 to the family's legal fund and getting hundreds of thousands of signatures for them to stay. And Rick Santorum posting this image of them being deported and how terrible it was and that they need to sign the petition. Well, after all of this rallying behind this white family by conservatives in 2013, the Obama administration gave them deferred action status. You see how conservatives are okay with this one white family getting deferred action, but they have been fighting for the last decade for black and brown children to get the deferred action for childhood arrivals, or DACA, taken away. Well, that was over a decade ago. This week, the U.S. government said that the Romecki family do have to deport, so the conservatives have rallied behind them again, saying that they're good immigrants, aka white. And conservatives love them because they're white, they're religious, and they support Trump, with one of the daughters of the Romecki family marrying Trace Bates. And Trace Bates was one of the guys who was at the January 6th insurrection. So you see how white conservatives do know how to rally behind immigration reform, but only when the same immigration policies that they voted for hurts their white brothers and sisters.
Coming from WBIR.com. Morristown family from Germany fears deportation after more than 15 years in the U.S. The Romecki family moved to Morristown from Germany after the German government fined them for homeschooling their children. For 15 years, the Romecki family has lived in Morristown. Huey Romecki, the father of the 7 Romecki children, works as a piano accompanist at Carson Newman University. He work at a school, but he don't want to put his kids in the school. If 2 + 2 is 4 and 5 + 5 is 10, what the fuck is this? Now they say the U.S. government is trying to deport them. The family moved to the U.S. from Germany in 2008. Their application for asylum said they were fined by the German government roughly $9,000 after homeschooling their children, court documents show. An immigration judge initially granted the family's application for asylum. The U.S. Department of Justice appealed the decision, and the U.S. Board of Immigration Appeals revoked the family's asylum status, documents show. The family, with the help of the U.S. Homeschool Defense Association, appealed to the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. A 3-judge panel unanimously ruled against the family. Well, now I see why the daughter was so quick to get married. They have not shown that Germany's enforcement of its general school attendance law amounts to persecution against them, Judge Jeffrey Sutton wrote for the court. Yeah, pretty much every country has rules regarding schooling. Like, if you can't show that your children are being schooled, whether online school, in-person school, home school, yeah, you still getting a truant officer at your house, and yeah, they might take your kids away. That's not religious persecution. It's not because of a certain religion that you practice that Germany said they're going to fine you. And $9,000, shit. Judge Sutton said in his ruling that the Romeckis didn't prove the German government persecuted them for their religion because they applied the homeschooling law regardless of religion. Since the Sixth Circuit ruling in 2013, the Romeckis have lived in the United States, checking in periodically with immigration agents, which is standard. Isn't it amazing that conservatives understand the standard process of immigration when the complexion is for protection? They're here with the approval of the U.S. government, but without permanent residency or citizenship status, said Kevin Bowden, an attorney with the U.S. Homeschool Defense Association. Like, why are y'all fighting so hard? United States Homeschool Defense. These kids are grown. Y'all saw how big them motherfuckers was in there, in that picture? And this isn't the United States fighting homeschooling. Oh, that's right there. Romecki said 2 weeks ago an immigration agent asked his family to return in 4 weeks with German passports and to prepare to self-deport. Our oldest children were in school in the German public schools, and their personality literally changed. Were you trying to raise little Nazis? Romecki said. We wanted to help them grow up in what they believed in and what we believed in, and not get basically indoctrinated with something we don't want. Now, I looked into the German educational system. Now, I do have a friend that I went to school with who was born in Germany, and her early education took place in Germany. There is a TikTok creator who allowed me to pick their brain. They currently live in Germany now. So I was asking, and there's not indoctrination. There's real history being taught, unwhitewashed, unadulterated, according to, grade level properly to kids. It's not a parochial school. It's public education. So this changing of the kids means that the kids were learning the truth and you didn't like that. So you pulled them out of school so that you could indoctrinate them. Got it. Cool. Romecki said since he and his wife moved to the U.S., they've had 2 more children, and 2 of their adult children are married to U.S. citizens. I just bet they are. Who looking for you, Romecki? Are you breaking the anti-Nazi laws over in Germany? Are they about to put you in a clink? I feel like they are. They work here. Everything is here in America, Romecki said. We don't have any place to live there. I don't have any work to provide for my family over there. Doesn't that defense sound really, really familiar? But from true asylum seekers whose countries are being ravaged because of United States military actions? The Chiquita Corp comes to mind for some reason. Banana Republics come to mind for some reason. Okay, you had a couple kids over here. The kids that were born over here, they can stay. You got to go. You wanted them homeschooled. Give them to one of them homeschool defense parents. Certain white folks believe in the foster care system and believe in adoption. Put it to the test, homie. Protect the hashtag protect the kids. I cannot. Yeah, we'll save Russell Brand for tomorrow, when this Allegra really calms down in my system. But yeah. The Romecki family situation reminds me of the flood of Ukrainian refugees that came in, and how there was a feel-good story that made national news of a former foreign exchange student sneaking her way back into the country and finding her way back to her host family. She wasn't deported. She wasn't treated like an illegal. They made sure to use the proper verbiage, calling her undocumented. Nobody cares about the approximate 50,000 undocumented Irish immigrants that live here illegally. Nobody worries about the border crisis within the people who take a ship over or take a plane over and just let visas lapse. See, the asylum seekers are generally giving a phone or something that tracks them and paperwork, and they make their court dates. But you know, complexion for protection. Bippity boppity boop. But yeah, we will save Russell Brand and the old geezer that's severely bootlicking for the police in light of the whole union rep laughing at the death of a would have been soon to be master's level graduate for tomorrow. They're undocumented. So, as always, thank you for watching. Make sure you check out the links in the description of this video. And as always, if you enjoyed this podcast, please share it on your social media and bring a friend back with you next time. And I will see you all tomorrow for Freeform Friday. Do keep in mind, tomorrow we will be starting a half an hour early. Your girl does have a birthday party to get to. So, as always, each one teach one, each one reach one. See y'all later.